Braden Dorsey had never intended to sit at the helm of his father's empire. His father was a titan in his own right, building the business from bare concrete floors and empty shelves into a multi-store enterprise with sweat-stained shirts and relentless drive. When a sudden heart attack took his father 2 years ago, the entire weight of that legacy fell on Braden's shoulders. He didn't just inherit a business, he inherited a story. He modernized systems, expanded logistics, and digitized inventory, but despite his success, something started gnawing at him. Or number 9, once a crown jewel in their chain, had plummeted in performance. In just 3 months, its customer reviews tanked, orders missed delivery windows, inventory counts were a mess, and in one particularly troubling week, 2 warehouse workers quit without notice. The district manager chalked it up to lazy Gen Z workers and the national staffing shortage. But Braden wasn't convinced. No spreadsheet or second-hand report could explain what his gut already knew. "I don't want another report," Braden told his assistant firmly. "I want the truth. I want to see it for myself." He had never met the staff at Store 9. Most hiring went through third-party agencies. The current manager, Shannon, had only been on board 6 months. It was the perfect smokescreen. Braden transformed himself, shaved the beard, dyed his hair a muted brown, threw on thick-rimmed glasses, and wore scuffed steel-toed boots with a faded hoodie. He even got a fake name badge, Ben Dawson, trainee. He walked through the warehouse doors just before sunrise. The air was cold and metallic, thick with the scent of cardboard, diesel, and burnt coffee. The place was a cacophony of beeping forklifts and echoing footsteps. "You the new guy?" a tall young woman asked, her voice low and indifferent. "Yeah, Ben," he said, extending a hand. She didn't shake it. "Zariah Clifton, follow me." She moved with practiced efficiency, showing him the basics. How the scanner tracked pallets, how to label boxes. No chit-chat, no smiles, just work. Her pace was brutal. By noon, Braden's body ached. His back screamed with each lift. He hadn't done labor like this since college. He botched a few barcode scans, dropped an open box of cleaning supplies, and silently cursed his own clumsiness. Zariah didn't yell, but her tone was razor-sharp. "You keep scanning wrong, you'll throw the whole count off. And trust me, you don't want Shannon breathing down your neck." Braden tried to play dumb. "Shannon? The manager?" Zariah nodded, then dropped her voice. "She's not someone you want to cross." "What do you mean?" Zariah paused, her jaw tightened. "Just don't talk too much, do your job, keep your head down." Later, during break, Braden sat alone near the humming vending machines. The room felt like a funeral. No laughter, no ease. A man named Lewis picked at his sandwich, eyes vacant. Across the table, a shorter guy with neck tattoos whispered something to him. "I'm not saying anything again," Lewis muttered, his voice trembling. "Last time I did, Shannon pulled me into her office and said if I talk reckless again, I'm out." Braden's gut twisted. He watched Zariah walk in, grab a protein bar, and leave without a word. The silence wasn't just heavy. It was haunted. Back on the floor, Braden worked beside Zariah again. "Hey," he said gently, "that thing you said about Shannon. I heard what Lewis said too. Is she threatening people?" She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes darted toward the loading dock. Then she leaned in, her voice barely a whisper. "Look, I don't know who you are or what you think this place is, but if you want to keep your job, stop asking questions. If Shannon catches wind that you're talking, she'll bury you." Braden blinked. "She can't do that." "She can. She has." Zariah's voice grew colder. "Marcus tried reporting a busted racking system last month. Next day, he's on night shifts. No explanation. He's got a daughter, man. Can't even pick her up from daycare anymore." Braden's jaw clenched. His hands balled into fists at his sides. Across the warehouse, He spotted Shannon, arms crossed, lips tight, speaking to a man in a crisp suit, probably the district manager. Untouchable. Zariah kept her eyes on the scanner. You want to help around here? Then do your job. Don't get anyone else hurt. That night, Braden sat in his parked car under flickering lot lights, staring out the windshield. The ache in his back was nothing compared to the ache in his chest. For the first time since his father's funeral, he didn't feel like a CEO. He felt like a man torn between two truths, the business he thought he knew and the silent suffering hiding behind its walls. And he realized this wasn't just a broken system. It was a wounded family, and it was his to heal. Through the windshield's dusty glass, Braden stared at the warehouse like it was a foreign country. Yesterday he had believed the problem was simple: lazy workers, poor attitudes. But what he found inside wasn't laziness. It was fear. Palpable, cold fear, quietly eating away at the heart of the operation, and he knew, deep down, he had barely scratched the surface. The next morning, Braden arrived even earlier. Before the lot lights had switched off, before a single forklift had stirred, he wanted to see who truly opened the place, who cared enough to show up before anyone else. At 5:52 a.m., the steel delivery door groaned open. Marcus, the tattooed worker from the break room, stepped inside. In one hand he balanced a steaming coffee, in the other a jangling ring of keys. Braden waited in the shadow of the building until Marcus unlocked the side entrance, then followed him in. "You're early," Marcus muttered, without glancing over. "Couldn't sleep," Braden replied, feigning a casual shrug. "Thought I'd get a head start on the backlog." Marcus nodded once, grabbed a clipboard from the wall and scanned the checklist. Under his breath, Braden caught a mumble, two words that stood out like a red flag, still short. "Who's not coming in?" Braden asked. "Same two temps from last week. They bailed. Supposed to be replacements. Guess nobody showed again." No frustration, no shock, just resignation. Marcus pushed a heavy rolling cart, its wheels screeching across the floor from uneven weight distribution. Braden followed, quietly observing how Marcus kept shifting his shoulder, wincing slightly every few minutes. "You good?" Braden asked, a note of concern creeping into his voice. "Old tear," Marcus grunted, "back from a few months ago, never healed right." "No workers' comp?" Marcus gave him a look that cut deeper than words. "You really think they gave me time off? Shannon said it was my fault for lifting wrong, told me if I took more than 2 days I'd be out." Braden clenched his teeth. Anger simmered just below the surface, but he swallowed it. This wasn't the time. By 7 a.m., the warehouse buzzed to life. Forklifts beeped, pallets thudded onto the floor, barcodes chirped with every scan. Braden was reassigned to inbound, same as yesterday, but this time he had company. A wiry young man named Theo stood beside him, pale and thin, his hoodie 2 sizes too big. He looked barely out of high school and barely fed. His hands trembled as he unwrapped shrink wrap from a tower of boxes. "You knew?" Braden asked. Theo nodded. "Second day. You get trained at all?" Theo looked confused. "Zariah showed me the scanner yesterday, but nobody else said much." Braden followed his gaze. Theo was scanning boxes from the wrong pile. Wrong SKU, wrong store. Store 15, not 9. "Hey, wait! Stop! These aren't ours. You're about to misroute these." Theo froze. I thought this was the right stack." "It's not your fault," Braden said gently. "They mix the pallets sometimes. You just have to double-check." Theo's face drained of color. "I already scanned like 20. "It's okay," Braden reassured. "We'll fix it. Just don't scan anything else till we sort this out." Moments later, Shannon descended like a storm. "The hell is going on here?" she barked. Braden stepped forward. "Just caught a miss, gang. Honest mistake." Her eyes narrowed in on Theo like a hawk spotting prey. "You," she snapped. Theo, he whispered. You've been here less than a week and already screwing up inventory counts. Do you even know what you're doing? You thought wrong. That mistake costs us hours in rerouting. Customers don't get their orders. You want to keep this job? Learn to pay attention. Braden stepped in, voice steady but firm. He wasn't trained properly. That's not his fault. Shannon turned her glare to him. Ben, isn't it? You've been here 2 days. You don't speak for anyone. I'm just saying, if the new hires aren't shown the right process. No one asked for your opinion, she cut him off, words sharp as glass. If you want to keep your spot, stay in your lane. She pivoted and walked off. Theo looked like he wanted to crawl inside one of the boxes and disappear. His shoulders collapsed inward. Braden crouched beside him. You okay? Theo nodded, but tears welled up in his eyes. He wiped them quickly and turned back to his scanner. The day dragged in a slow, punishing grind. Braden started noticing more things. A ladder with a cracked step, a forklift with a faulty brake that Marcus had to kick manually to stop. No safety gloves in sight, no safety at all, and no one seemed to care. No one dared report it. Everyone was terrified of being next on Shannon's list. Around 3 o'clock, Zaria pulled Braden behind a stack of sealed boxes. You pissed her off, she said flatly. Yeah, Braden muttered. I noticed. She's gonna come for you next, make you quit. That's how she works. Braden folded his arms. How long has it been like this? Zaria looked around, her voice low. Since she took over. Before that, it wasn't perfect, but people weren't afraid to speak up. Then why stay? He asked. She exhaled sharply through her nose. Because I'm not letting her run me out, and because some of these guys don't have anyone else. Marcus, Lewis, now Theo. Braden nodded slowly. The weight of it all pressed heavy on his chest. They parted ways before anyone noticed, but his mind was already spinning. Observations weren't enough anymore. He needed proof. And fate gave him the first piece. At 4:30, Lewis was sweeping near the back office. As he bent to pick up his dustpan, Shannon stepped out, clipboard in hand, phone to her ear. I told corporate the headcount was fine, she said into the call. If I file another requisition, they'll start asking questions. No, I'll just push the current crew harder. They'll manage. Then she noticed Lewis, and her voice flipped like a switch. Get back to work. Lewis nodded, eyes down, retreating like a shadow. 15 minutes later, Braden made his move. Later that day, in the stale stillness of the break room, Braden found Lewis hunched over a vending machine sandwich. He sat beside him and spoke low. I heard what she said earlier. Lewis stiffened, startled. His eyes flicked to the door. Braden leaned in. She's been lying to corporate, telling them we're fully staffed when we're clearly not. That's why everyone's drowning in work. Lewis's jaw tightened, lips pressed into a hard line. You didn't hear that, he said flatly. What I did. No, Lewis repeated, voice almost pleading now. You didn't. Because if you did and you say anything, she'll flip it on you. She always does. Makes it your fault, your screw-up. That's how she works. Braden nodded slowly, the weight of Lewis's words pressing deep. Let me ask you something, he said, voice calm but sharp. If someone from corporate walked in here tomorrow and asked what it's really like, would you tell them? Lewis's eyes drifted away, jaw clenching like a vice, not unless I knew it would actually change something. That night, Braden sat alone in his car, lit only by the soft glow of his phone screen. His fingers tapped out a message to his assistant. Send me the staffing reports for Store 9 for the last 4 months. Also, request HR logs for complaints from this location. Don't alert the district team. He hit send, then stared at the warehouse walls that had hidden so much pain for so long. They weren't just short-staffed. They were drowning, lied to, manipulated, and ruled by fear. And he had let it fester. Not anymore. Tomorrow, he wouldn't just observe. He'd confront it. By the time Braden stepped into the warehouse on his third morning, something had shifted. The silence was thicker, not just the absence of noise, but the presence of pressure. A quiet that crackled beneath the surface, ready to shatter. He passed Theo in the hallway, still folding empty boxes at a lopsided table. The kid didn't even look up. Braden didn't speak. He didn't need to. He went straight to the inventory cage where Zariah was already knee-deep in returns. She didn't greet him, just kept working, gloves on, focus tight. "You sleep at all?" Braden asked gently. She pulled one glove off. "Had to take my brother to school, missed the bus, jogged half the way here." Braden nodded slowly, the image painting itself in his head. Bare streets, heavy backpack, cracked sneakers hitting pavement. "You doing all right?" Zariah finally looked up. "No. But what's that got to do with anything?" He didn't answer. Instead, he moved to the back aisle where Marcus was dragging a pallet jack, its wheel thudding like a broken heart. "Where's the maintenance tag?" Braden asked. "Shannon pulled it last week, said it was still usable." Braden grabbed the other side. The front wheel barely moved, screeching with resistance. Every foot they dragged, it rattled up his arms. "You know it's still busted?" Marcus let out a breath. "She knows. Doesn't care." They set the pallet in place. Marcus leaned against the wall, massaging his shoulder again. "You still dealing with that tear?" Marcus nodded. "Got a doctor's note in my glove box. Never turned it in." She'd just retaliate. "Drop my hours, already lost overtime last week." Braden felt it building in his chest, the pressure, the line. He was waiting for the right moment, the undeniable one. At 10:45, it arrived. Shannon stormed onto the floor, clipboard gripped like a weapon. "Who stacked those outbounds?" she shouted, pointing toward the staging area. "Those boxes are tilted." "That's a safety issue." No one answered. She pointed again. "Who did it?" Theo flinched, then raised a shaky hand. I thought they were straight." "I tried to match the lines." "You tried?" she snarled. "You think trying matters when someone gets hurt? You think customers care that you tried?" Braden stepped out from the aisle, voice clear. "That's enough." Shannon turned. "Excuse me?" "You've made your point. Move on." "You don't tell me how to manage my floor," she hissed. "And you don't get to humiliate someone who's trying his best." She stepped toward him. "Do you want to be written up too, Ben?" Around them, the warehouse slowed. Zariah stood frozen mid-lift. Lewis looked up from labeling. Theo was already walking away. Braden didn't flinch. "You're creating a hostile environment." Her voice dropped, a hiss of venom. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Braden reached into his back pocket, pulled out his wallet, and held up his real ID. "Braden Dorsey," he said, voice calm and unshaking. "Owner and CEO." The silence didn't hit like a bomb. It swelled in slow motion, rolling across the floor like thunder. Shannon blinked. Her mouth opened. No words came. "No one was supposed to tell you I was coming," Braden said, turning to the team. "That was the point." He looked each of them in the eye. "Every one of you has been working under conditions I wouldn't tolerate in any other store. You've been overworked, ignored, and silenced." Then he turned back to Shannon. "You've harassed employees, ignored safety risks, lied to cover your tracks. That's not just wrong. It's cause for immediate termination." Her face paled. "You can't just show up and pretend to be someone else." I don't need your permission to know the truth. 2 security staff entered from the loading dock. Braden had called them hours earlier. Shannon, he said, voice firm, you're done. Leave the premises. She stared, then turned sharply and walked off. The security followed in silence. She didn't look back. No one spoke. And Marcus whispered, holy hell. Braden turned to the crew. I'm not here to play hero. I should have known what was happening months ago. That's on me. But we're fixing it. Starting now. He pointed toward the hallway. There's a conference room being set up with HR. One by one, you'll get a chance to speak. In private. No notes. No retaliation. Just truth. Zariah finally asked, and after? Braden met her gaze. New leadership, full staffing, safe equipment, and someone who listens. She nodded once, then turned back to work. Shoulders not as tight. Braden approached Theo. You all right? Theo nodded slowly. I didn't think anyone would actually do something. You deserve better, Braden said. All of you do. Theo hesitated. So, am I still fired? Braden smiled faintly. You were never fired. He watched the kid walk away. Not fast, not confident, but steadier. Braden stayed on the floor the rest of the day. Not as a CEO, not in disguise. Just there. Just present. By 4 p.m., HR had finished 7 interviews. Multiple violations were confirmed. 1 forklift was decommissioned. A temporary supervisor was flown in. Marcus's shoulder injury was formally logged for reassessment, with back pay under review. As workers clocked out, Braden stood by the exit. Lewis stopped on his way past. Guess I owe you an apology. For what? For thinking no one at the top gave a damn. Raymond gave a tired but honest smile. Sometimes we don't. But that's changing, starting now. Lewis nodded, then stepped out into the fading gold of evening. The sky, streaked with muted orange and deep blue, cast a softer light across the warehouse walls. Braden lingered behind, standing still in the quiet hush that settled like a warm blanket. It wasn't brittle anymore, not the tense, cracking silence of fear. It was different now. It was relief. 3 weeks later, Braden sat alone again, this time on the warehouse floor, clipboard in hand. But it wasn't the same floor, and he wasn't the same man. He watched the early shift gear up under the cold hum of fluorescent lights. Lines of pale white traced the concrete, but the shadows in the corners, once heavy with dread, had lifted. The work hadn't changed. It was still physical, still tough, but it was no longer soaked in fear. Since the day of the reveal, Braden had returned twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays, not to hide, not to supervise from a distance, but to work, shoulder to shoulder with the people whose names he now knew, whose stories lived in his head long after he left the building. Not many CEOs could tell you exactly how long it took to scan a winter coat into inventory, or how sweat pooled under your collar when the humidity turned up. Braden could. Zariah walked by, pulling a fully loaded outbound cart. She caught sight of him. You ever going to let someone else hold that clipboard? She asked, smirking. Braden smiled, eyes still on the page. Not until I see at least one shift start on time, without a single equipment issue. She raised a brow. You'll be holding that thing till next Christmas. He laughed, then set the clipboard down beside him. You got a minute? She nodded, and they stepped aside to the old returns cage, once a chaotic mess of broken tools and ignored product, now clean, labeled, and functional. I'm looking for someone to step into a lead role, he said. Not just for Store 9. I want to build a field team. People who know what real conditions look like, who can audit quietly and truthfully. Zariah's eyes narrowed, not in suspicion but in calculation. You want me to spy on the other stores? No, Braden said. I want you to do exactly what you've been doing. Look out for the people who never get heard, but this time you'll have authority to make it count. She didn't answer right away. Then, will I still be on the floor sometimes? Absolutely. That's the whole point. You'll report straight to me. No red tape. She nodded slowly. Then yeah, I'm in. He extended his hand. This time, she took it. As she turned back to her station, she added with a dry grin, Marcus thinks you're going to get bored and stop showing up. Not likely, Braden replied. Lewis passed nearby, clipboard in hand, helping train 2 new hires, both temps, both scheduled for review after 1 week, this time with proper onboarding, real safety orientation, and expectations that made sense. The HR interviews had uncovered more than misconduct. They exposed something systemic, a pattern of neglect from the regional level that delayed repairs, ignored safety updates, and treated workers like numbers. Braden hadn't just fired Shannon. He had dismantled and rebuilt the entire regional oversight system. Now, every store had a direct line to an operations liaison, real people with real accountability. Inside the break room, change was tangible. The old vending machine was gone. In its place, a modest kitchenette, microwave, filtered water, and a corkboard with rotating updates, shift changes, safety bulletins, and birthdays. Theo stood reading next week's training schedule. He jumped slightly when Braden entered. Didn't see you there, he said sheepishly. Getting used to the new setup? Theo nodded. Yeah, it's different. Better. You've been consistent, Braden told him. Your supervisor says you haven't missed a scan in over a week. Theo looked down, unsure how to accept the praise. I didn't think I'd last here, he admitted. I kept waiting for someone to tell me I wasn't needed. You were always needed, Braden said gently. You just weren't supported. Theo nodded again. I'm staying, if that's all right. It is, Braden said. Later that afternoon, Braden met privately with Marcus in what used to be Shannon's office. The blinds were gone. The walls had been stripped bare. It was now the worker feedback room. 2 chairs, a table, and a locked suggestion box in the corner. You talked to your doctor? Braden asked. Yeah, Marcus replied. Said no lifting for at least 3 more weeks. You'll stay on modified duty, no loss in pay. We'll rotate you through logistics and systems checks. You've done that before, right? Marcus nodded. First warehouse job I had before this. Good. Someone from corporate will shadow you next week. We're drafting a formal injury mitigation plan. You'll help write it. Marcus blinked. You sure you want me doing that? You're the reason we caught half the risks in this place. That makes you exactly the person I want. After Marcus left, Braden sat for a moment staring at the suggestion box. Already 3 forms sat inside, not anonymous. Outside, the afternoon shift filtered in. Some nodded, a few smiled, but none looked over their shoulders. None flinched when the office door opened. At 5 p.m., Braden met with the temp agency rep in the loading yard. She reviewed the new site requirements. Training minimums, weekly evaluations, direct feedback from floor supervisors. We can meet these, she said, but you're the only client asking for this much detail. Braden didn't hesitate. That I'm fine being the only one. As the sun dipped low, he walked the warehouse perimeter one final time. Exterior lights flickered on, no delay. The loading dock was spotless, no clutter. No yelling, just work. He found Zariah near the receiving dock, scanning inbound freight with a new hire beside her. You still here? She asked, not looking up. Just needed to see it with my own eyes. She didn't press, just nodded and returned to the scanner. Braden stood a moment longer, watching. No chaos, no shouting, no fear. Just motion, rhythm, purpose. Then, without ceremony, He turned and walked toward the side exit. No one stopped him, and for the first time, no one needed to. Behind him, the warehouse kept moving. Not perfect, but now, finally,